Okay, so this is a video reply to musical, I guess. His video basically against or counter to the Blasphemy challenge. But I'll try to hit on everything. Hopefully I won't miss anything. Because you do make a lot of points in the video, so hopefully I won't miss any. You start out and you basically explain why you think the only possible way to get reason or logic is from God. And I won't give the whole list of your argument. People can go and watch your video to get the whole thing. Basically, it boils down at the end that reason cannot come from anywhere but some higher being. Anyway, you're not specific to the Christian God, but a God. And that's just silly to me, really. You explain that anything else would be arbitrary. And that's sort of where it breaks down right there. Very definition. Any explanation for something or any reason without a purpose or an explanation behind it is arbitrary. That's what arbitrary means. Logic and reason coming from the Bible never have an explanation behind them, really. It's always just because that's the way God says it. You know, thou shalt not kill. It's a great rule. I can think of a whole lot of reasons why that would be a great rule. God doesn't give any. He just says, thou shalt not kill. That's an arbitrary reason. That's not logical at all. To give an example, I could say, don't touch that. Or I can say, don't touch that, you'll burn yourself. Which one is arbitrary and which one is reasoned. You can decide that for yourself. Now the next point you make, you say, basically, without God, all we can talk about are particulars, no universals. So there can be no language or communication, since they rely on universals. Again, that's just silly. Communication and language don't rely on universals. They rely on collective observation. If me and someone who speaks French, for example, were in the same room, I could point to my fuzzy blue hat, and I could say hat, and they could point to the same hat and say chapeau, and we would both know what we're talking about because we can observe the situation, we know what's going on. The same in any sort of communication, mathematic or linguistic or otherwise. It's based on collective knowledge and direct observation. With universals, as you say, if that's the only way to have language, and you're coming from a point of the Bible being an accurate representation of those universals, not only would there only be one language, or at the very least no chance for a misinterpretation of communication and language, and that's bluntly, ignoring the fact that there would have to only be one language if you're taking the truth, the universals, out of the Bible, since there would have only been one to start with, and it's universal, so there would be no changes or branches off from that. So it's just completely nonsensical logic behind that. I'm not sure why you would have made that statement at all. Hopefully you don't truly understand the implications of that statement. But anyway. Next, you say that in the atheistic worldview or what have you, that we would say, after examining the world, it itself shows that there is no God, and that's not true at all. I wouldn't say that. I would not say an examination of the world or the universe, science, whatever, shows that there is no God. It definitely doesn't prove that there's no God. What it does do is show that there's no God necessary to explain how the world and the universe works as we understand it. Now, that's two very different things. You say basically that it would involve inductive reasoning, I guess, is where I can sort of jump in and counter it a little bit. We would have to know everything about everything, kind of, to sum up the argument there before we could say there's no God, which would be true, since that's not what I'm saying, I'm just saying I haven't seen any reason to think there's a God, to sort of approach it a little differently. You don't need to know exactly how every car works to understand how a carburetor works, for example. You don't need sort of complete knowledge about something to understand how a small part of it works. And that's what science does. We understand some, and as much as we understand seems to fit together without a need for God. As we get more and more knowledge, it seems to fit into that same case. So there's no reason so far that we've found to believe that God is necessary. That doesn't mean there's no God. It just means that no God is an option that might be out there. So moving on to the next one here. The soulless flesh machine issue, as you put it. I would agree with the soulless flesh machine. I think I am a soulless flesh machine. But the problem is you sort of connect or combine universal free will with the practical implications of conscious free will. And what I mean by that is you're completely correct as far as I'm concerned. I mean, others would disagree with me and say that we have some level of free will, but I don't. I would go with the soulless flesh machine. And you're right in saying that at a very fundamental level, biologically, chemically, etc., we have no control over what we're doing. We're just going through the motions. Where that changes on a level of personal responsibility, not the action, but the responsibility for that action, is with consciousness. With consciousness, we, at a very practical level, whether we have free will or not, we feel as though we have free will. I can say, I think I'm going to pick up my phone, and I pick it up. Now, at a very, very fundamental physics level, I would say that I had no choice. At that moment, I was just supposed to pick up my phone, and that's what all the parts of me needed to do, so that's what I did. But consciously, I have a memory of understanding that I feel like picking up my phone, deciding to pick up my phone, and then picking up my phone. So I can deal with being responsible for that action. It seems to me, regardless of the physical reality, that I made that choice. There's really no alternative to that. Even following your logic, we are, completely not responsible for our actions because at a very fundamental level, we have no free will. That would also go just as true for the feeling that we have about it being necessary to hold people responsible for their actions. So we would still have to do that even if there was no practical difference with consciousness and free will. So but by your own logic, just take it a step further. Okay, we have no way to control our actions at a fundamental level, so we can't be responsible for our actions. So the feelings that we have about putting people in jail for crimes have to be followed because we're just a soulless flesh machine. Either way, it still leads to personal responsibility of your actions. So regardless of what side of the spectrum you're on, it does both lead in the same direction as far as I'm concerned, as far as I can tell. If there's some other explanation, I would love to hear it. You go on, and let's see. Oh yes, you challenge atheists to stop using all of the tools of the God of the Bible in their arguments. Basically, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is you can't take someone's argument seriously unless they are a self-contradictory, illogical, immoral lunatic. Now, that doesn't seem like a very reasoned stance to me. So I'm very glad to fail that list. This is Atheist in a Hat, and see you later.